shoot.
Where is Tom?
Is he already on there?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Vineland Board of Education July 11th meeting. We have roll call, please, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Jennings?
Present.
Mr. Medio?
Here.
Mrs. Sobrana?
Present.
Ms. Spinelli?
Here.
Mr. Ulrich?
Present.
Ms. Acosta?
Here.
Mr. Boardley?
Present. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has caused notice and posting of this meeting to be sent to the following: announcing time and place thereof, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, SNJ Today, the Press of Atlantic City, Nuestra Comunidad, Visto Bueno, the Clerk for the City of Vineland, and the Administrative Office Public Bulletin Board. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Haley, do we have a resolution for executive session this evening?
We do not.
Dr. Gruccio, do we have any special presentations?
No.
Coach Russo, did you want to present tonight?
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me. On behalf of the Vineland High School football team and the Red and Gray Gridiron Booster Club, we would like to congratulate Dr. Gruccio on being named the 2018 Red and Gray Lifetime Achievement Award winner. It means so much to us to have her support since we've been here, in 2013, as I was named the head coach then. Dr. Gruccio is at all our events, comes out into the field, talks to our players, all our fundraisers. When we break down 1, 2, 3 Vineland, 3, 2, 1 family, and that's the type of environment that Dr. Gruccio has created here in the Vineland Public Schools, and we appreciate you so much. Our event to honor Dr. Gruccio will be August 2nd at the Greenview Inn. The first part is a golf tournament for all you golfers out there, and the second part is a dinner where we're going to honor Dr. Gruccio. On a personal note, to tell you some things that happened with the team, we had some tragedy strike with one of our players, and there were some things that happened in his, in his home, and Dr. Gruccio was the first one to reach out to me, the first one to reach out to the player. In addition to that, the first one to give him a card, and we thank you so much. Words cannot explain the appreciation we have for you. You do a wonderful job, and at this time I'd like to have Jeff Medio bring up this helmet for you. Hopefully it'll look nice in your office. Now, this helmet that Dr. Gruccio is getting tonight is a helmet that we can no longer use. They've restored it, and we're looking forward to seeing that in your office when we come to visit you. So once again, Dr. Gruccio, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Another round of applause for Dr. Gruccio.
Thank you so much. I'm truly very humbled by the honor. I might need to use the helmet to bump a few heads, so I'm well prepared now. But thank you so much. I'm very honored and humbled. Thank you.
Next up is the HIB report. Any questions on the HIB? Seeing none, motion to approve?
So moved.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi? Yes. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. Next is the approval of minutes for the June 6, 2018 combined board meeting. Questions, comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi? Yes. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. We have a report by the board solicitor.
Yes, Mr. Boardley. I have been asked to provide a summary of the process involving the naming or renaming of schools. Policy 7250 sets forth the process for the naming of schools and facilities. The policy defines school buildings and also defines what facilities are. And that policy has been revisited over the years and has been amended and has resulted in the current form of 7250 that's in effect today. Paragraph 2 of the policy provides the criteria and qualifications for the naming of a building or facility. A building or facility may be named to honor and memorialize the contribution and service of a school official, district employee, resident, or former resident, A, who has significantly contributed his, her time, effort, and skills to any program, sport, activity, school, facility, or volunteer organization of this district or to the city of Vineland, and or B, who has significantly contributed funds, equipment, or other resources to any program, sport, activity, school, facility, or volunteer organization of this district or to the city of Vineland. And then C provides that with respect to the naming of a building, an individual must have passed away 5 years prior to the naming. The naming or renaming of a school can be initiated by a board member, by the superintendent, by a member of the public. And the policy sets forth the process for the naming of or renaming of a school building, which is different process than the naming of a school facility. What occurs is that if the suggestion is initiated by the superintendent, the board, or the public, that process begins with the submission of that recommendation to the board. The board then decides whether or not to invoke the policy. It doesn't vote on the individual that the superintendent or anyone else recommends. You vote to invoke the policy. And what happens if you decide that you will name or rename a school, then the process begins with Mrs. Haley advertising for nominations. There's a 20-day period and there's a whole procedure set forth. So basically it's a two-step process. The first step of the process is invoking the policy and seeking nominations, regardless of how or who initiated it. The second vote takes place after the various nominations are received, public input is presented, and the board then votes. And that is at the second vote on the process. This matter was brought up a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, and it was, the vote at that time was against the motion to invoke the process. The board may renew that motion tonight. Robert's rules provide the process. In my opinion, a motion to renew can be raised by, it's not a motion for reconsideration. That has to be done at the same meeting in which the original motion was made. But any board member under 9B that Mr. Medio is presenting can make a motion. You don't have to be in the majority or minority. Anybody can make the motion and second it if you wanted to invoke the process. And that's the vote that you will have tonight. You will not be voting on any individual, just whether to invoke the process. Okay.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
I
DeSanto.
believe the Daily Journal has fairly reported that in several articles, that that's the process.
Agreed. Thank you, Mr. DeSanto. Moving on to superintendent's recommendations for discussion and approval by the board. Dr. Ruccio.
I would like to recommend discussion of, which one?
We have public comment on agenda items.
My apologies. Public comment on agenda items. Reminded anyone that wishes to speak, you're limited to 5 minutes per comment. Thank you.
I have several yellow sheets. I'll just call them, I guess, in alphabetical order here. We have Avery Malinowski.
Good evening. I just wanted to introduce Avery Malinowski to the board. Avery is a 8th grade, going in 9th grade student from Vineland Public Schools.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and giving me a chance to read this to you. On October...
Excuse me, Avery, if you can just speak louder into the mic so everyone can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
On October 3rd, 1993, Sergeant Dominic M. Pilla died on duty fighting for our country. He was featured in the famous movie Black Hawk Down and was awarded after death the Bronze Star Medal of Valor. It was in his blood to fight for our country, for our freedom, and he died doing exactly what he loved. Is that not what every school encourages us students to do? To learn, to do what we love, and to get a job that allows us to make our dreams come true. Sergeant Pilla did exactly that, and yet when all is said and done, it's apparently not enough for a school to be named after. He fought for our country and died for our country, trying to save the life of another and ultimately saving the lives of millions. He may not have donated thousands of dollars, but he did something that money can never do. He gave his life. He gave us hope. He gave us inspiration. He gave us our freedom. So I urge you to think about this question, please. Why can't a school, a place that urges us to get better, be named after a man who gave his life for us? Why are we being restrained from giving thanks to a man who deserves it? So Dominic, this is for you and everyone who gave their lives for the life of another. Surviving, never thriving. Fear never showing. Never really knowing just how far they've come. Segregation, slavery, religion, and speech. Everything we have today. Everything we will have in the future. Nothing is without sacrifice, and nothing good comes without a price. The lives the veterans have given up, everything they have suffered will not and has not been in vain. We can live because we remember. We can reach out to others. We have the freedom of religion. We have the rights. We can do what others cannot. The mistakes united we have made, the pride united we have shown, is given to us by the memory of those who have fought and to those who continue to fight. In your honor, we will stand tall. We will be brave and continue your legacy. For generations to come, I have no say, but for us, right here, You give us our future. You give us our strength. You gave us our rights. You gave us our hope. And hope is the only thing stronger than fear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, would you be able to supply us a copy of what you read? Would you, do you have, if you can always email it to us. Thank you. Okay, the next person is Tony Suggs.
Sir, if you could just grab that microphone out of there and hold it, it'll help everyone hear you.
Good evening. My name's Tony Suggs. I'm the president of Firebase Nama Veterans Organization. When everything was presented to us for the naming of the school, we support, because it is a fellow veteran, and sometimes here in the city itself doesn't give the veterans recognition. And several events it went to, you know, things have fallen to the wayside with it. And this is one issue that we feel that it should go through. My only question is, how much does a person have to volunteer when they volunteer their life? That's my only question when the criteria of everything is getting renamed. That's it. That's all I have. Good night.
Thanks, sir.
Next person is Joe Testa.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If I may digress for a moment, and I know you have a time limit, and I know at the end of that time limit, either a bell rings, a gong goes off, or a net comes out, but I want to I walked in this room and it was eerie because I was the last class here in December of 1962, and then I moved to the new building and graduated from the new building in June of 1963. So this is the first time I've been in this room since then, and it looks about the same. And the stage looks quite familiar, although if my father was alive, he'd tell you I was not up on that stage for any type of honorary degrees or scholastic achievement, but I was up on that stage a few times. I also are going to ask for your indulgence because I prepared my comments, and I know what it's like to be up there where you are and Mr. DeSanto is, and you want to keep things moving, and I understand that. But I'm close to 5 minutes, but I may run over. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence. It may be only about a minute. I don't think it'll be more than that. But I'll ask for your indulgence because I don't want to speak quickly. I do as I always do for 50 years of being a lawyer. I prepared and prepared and prepared again. And I can tell you that no matter how I do it, I'm somewhere close to about 6 minutes. So I don't want to take away from what's so very important to me and to the Pillow family. I want to thank the board for allowing the Pillow family and those of us that support their quest to be here tonight. This is an important night for the Pillows and the residents of the city of Vineland. As a citizen of Vineland and a retired military, I am proud and I am honored to be part of this important endeavor. And when I was asked to be on this committee, I did not even hesitate to say yes. Some have said in the last couple weeks that I've talked to people that this issue before the board is an easy one for this board. Some have called it a no-brainer. On both sides of the issue, I have heard the reasons for those statements. I, for one, personally, I do not think it's that easy. And I will attempt to explain to you why it is not, but I also am going to attempt to explain to you why the board should approve this request and ultimately honor Dominic Pillow and all our heroes. Yes, I've heard this argument. We have Veterans Memorial School in Vineland, And yes, we always honor those who wore a uniform defending our great country. The key word is veteran. A person who has served or is serving in the military is a veteran. I, for one, am a veteran. Are our veterans heroes? Absolutely, without question in my mind. I honor anyone that ever wore any uniform for the United States of America. Are all who died wearing our uniform while serving our country heroes? Absolutely. And again, I honor them all. So what distinguishes Sergeant Dominic Pilla from the rest? He alone is a hero, as those who died in Black Hawk Down, famous battle. Why is Black Hawk Down and Dominic Pilla and his comrades in arms so important? On that tragic day, Dominic and his comrades in arms were left on the battlefield. Yes, left, abandoned, as a result of a stand-down order. The government and our military failed them. Did we learn from that tragic event? No. No. Years later, history repeated itself when a similar stand-down order was given in Benghazi. The two events remind us all, especially those that wore the uniforms of our country, that we violated a standing principle and oath, an oath that I took proudly. Never leave our men and women on the battlefield. We abandoned them and we let them die. Yes, our government and our military, through a lack of communication or miscommunication or neglect, but nevertheless, we left them. We got there later to witness their desecrated bodies. Visualize that for a moment. Their desecrated bodies being dragged through the street. Once again, I reiterate a basic principle of a warrior's ethos. I will never leave a fallen comrade. No matter what branch of service or job title you had in the military, you always kept this thought foremost in your mind. So here are two reasons for this school to bear the name of Sergeant Dominic Pilla. First, his name on the building would remind each of us every time we see it that we left him, his comrades, as well as those poor souls in Benghazi to die. Then we shall all endeavor to watch our government and our military and our leaders to make sure they support and carry out this principle, so no one will ever again be left behind. Never again. Second, our country, our state, our county, and this city make the news too often for negative events. Why not honor Sergeant Pilla and all those heroes left behind, and at the same time, let our city, our county, and all the citizens of Vineland we stand behind our heroes. We adopt and adhere to the principle that we fight for our men and women in uniform and will not ever let them be left behind or forgotten. Sergeant Pilla wrote a blank check the day he took his oath in the Army to give his life, if needed, for this country. At the young age of 23, Dominic's check was cashed, and he died defending all citizens in this city and across the nation. The ultimate sacrifice, more, in my opinion, more than meets the policy and criteria set by this board to name this school after Sergeant Pilla. That is all he had left to give, his life. Members of the board, as I stand you before tonight, please make this current board a very special one that will be remembered forever in the archives of the city of Vineland's history as a board that supports our military heroes who are no longer with us and will never ever be forgotten. I thank you for your time, your patience, and your consideration on behalf of Dominic and his family and all our forgotten heroes. And I have one last thought. I had this last thought in the middle of the night. If we name this school after Dominic Pilla, I would like to see under his name the Warriors Code for all the students and every bystander and every citizen to see, in quotes, I will never leave a fallen comrade behind. Thank you, and God bless America.
Thank you, sir.
Joe Griffiths.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Joe. Thank you. I'm a Vietnam veteran, very proud of it. I do the Welcome Home Veterans Radio Show, and I gotta tell you, I'm glad that you guys are here tonight to try and put this thing in the proper perspective. I get involved, being in the air for a lot of years, with a national show, dealing with a lot of veterans issues, whether it's in Liberty, Iowa, or San Diego, where a Marine in his senior year wore a Marine t-shirt, a student, and was chastised by his teacher, who was a school board member, a city council member, and a teacher. He lost all 3 jobs. Threw a student out telling him he was immoral for wearing a Marine shirt to his senior year in high school. Too many flags placed outside a real estate office in Independence, Iowa, over the Memorial Day weekend. Or Hollyoaks, California, Hollyoaks, Florida, for displaying the branches of the service where the commander of the post had 2 grandchildren serving in Iraq at the same time. Nobody wins in these issues. It makes us look more unpatriotic. In the end, the flags go up, the schools get named, the teachers get fired. So I applaud you guys for being here tonight. I just want to make 4 short remarks. Dominic was no different than my friend sitting out there tonight, Ryan Peters, who did 7 tours in Iraq, Afghanistan. He's an 18-year Navy SEAL. He won't tell you he's a hero, I will. They walk our streets, they shop in our stores, they shop in our malls, they go to our beaches. Because veterans don't stand up and applaud themselves. Dominic did 4 things that most of us in this building, I'm a Vietnam vet, so maybe I did it, and I'm sure Ryan and some of the other guys that are here tonight did. He went to Somalia because they were dragging people through the streets. They were beheading them. They were beheading Americans. You guys. Us. They were beheading the children, the women, the senior citizens, the government officials, the pirates, the bad guys. We don't know bad guys. We have a police call here in Vineland or in Cape May where I live. 32 police cars show up. You want to see bad places? Go to Somalia, go to Iraq, go to Turkey, go to Pakistan, go to Syria. Dominic did 4 things that none of us in this room can say that he did that we didn't. Driving here from Cape May tonight, I didn't pass anybody being drugged down the streets of Landis Avenue when they're waiting to be beheaded or set on fire or skinned. Dominic prevented that. It's over there, it's not over here. It's not over here on account of one thing. Dominic. Dominic stopped 3 other things that I did not witness when I was driving to Vineland tonight. I didn't pass any tanks coming up 55 to bomb us. I didn't hear the sounds being close to the ocean of ships shelling our beaches. And I didn't pass any planes flying over our head, getting ready to bomb us. He did such a damn good job, we take what he did for granted. He's probably the best thing since Judge Landis to come to Vineland. If anything our children today in our country learn about history, which we don't do a very good job of, is when they leave the school and it's got Dominic's name on it, they're going to know one important piece of history, why we're free. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Assemblyman Ryan Peters.
Good evening. I'm an assemblyman in Legislative District 8. I do not represent this district. I'm from Burlington, Camden, and Lanning counties. But I drove an hour and a half tonight to come down here to speak. Because prior entering public service, I was in the military, served as a Navy SEAL for 7 years, deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and fought in our country's foreign wars. Like you, and as a fellow public servant, I know you guys are out here tonight with little pay, away from your families, away from your friends, to be here for one reason, and it's not for the pay, and it's not for the glory, and it's to inspire your community and inspire your students. And I think this provides a momentous opportunity for you to do so, to inspire your community, to inspire your students to look up at a hero, and not just a veteran. Because when you join the military, you sign a blank check for the amount up to including your life. And Sergeant Pillow, as many of my friends did, had their check cashed. They made the ultimate sacrifice. They fought in a foreign war. They spilled their own blood so that we could be free back here at home. The war and conflict in Somalia is a conflict that probably would never be known by most people unless Mark Bowden wrote a book about it and they made a movie about it. But yet, Sergeant Pillow readily did as he was told, got on a plane, got on a helicopter, and engaged the enemy. And I can tell you myself, having sat in a helicopter waiting for it to take off and going into harm's way, that there's a lot of things that go through your head. But one of them is the knowledge that your country will remember you, you'll be brought home, and you'll be honored. And so why I'm here tonight is basically to highlight the point that as a public servant with no pay, giving up your time, probably costing you, this is an interesting opportunity, and you face difficult decisions. I know there's a lot of people who want a school named after them. And I guess the tendency is to name it after an intersecting street in front of the school. That maybe these students will walk in and see Lincoln Street, Lincoln Avenue, and think, okay, this is my school. Or there's the opportunity to look up and see the name of Sergeant Dominic Pillow. They could, years from now, probably have to research who he was, what he did, and what conflict he fought in, and know that he was born and raised in Vineland, what he did, what he sacrificed, and what he believed in. So I humbly ask you to reconsider the motion, to think about making the difficult decisions, and to name the school after a hero so that these students can look up and be inspired. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Bonnie Martin.
Hello, thank you for giving me the time to speak. I'm 58 years old and I have my last child that I'm raising in Vineland AMSA program. So he will not be attending the new school. But I would like to make a comment. I was born and raised in Millville. That's not something that I tell a lot of people because I'm a Vinelander through and through. All of my kids went through Vineland schools. I've been married for 35 years. But I can remember my first school in Millville. And it was named after a woman named Rebecca Mulford Bacon, and I'm sure probably nobody here knows who that woman is, but I do, because I went to her school and we were taught about that. And it made an impact on my life because Rebecca Mulford Bacon was the wife of the man that ran Whittle Tatum Glass, which was the heart of Millville. And she was a philanthropist, and she worked tirelessly to raise money for the school before there was public education. I think that I implore you to invoke your privilege to bring the school naming up again, and for the reason that I think children need role models and they need people to look up to. And I certainly do support Sergeant Pillow's name on a school, but regardless of that, it should be someone that's inspirational to the children, that they can inspire to be like. And I find that it's very, very important for all the children, rather than just naming it Lincoln Avenue School. I think that this is a momentous time for us as Vinelanders to remember what it is that we value and remember that freedom is not free. There's a price for it. Recently, we had family visitors from Puerto Rico, and they wanted a Vineland tour, which I found very unusual because I live here. And I took them around to the different places in Vineland that meant something to me and my family. And one of the stops was at Vineland Landis Park. And my grandson was with me, and we passed by all the monuments in Vineland Park. Although my son had played baseball there for years and years, we rarely went to the center of the park. We did go to the Veterans Day ceremonies there when they were held, but rarely ever looked at the monuments. And my grandson was, for the first time, found out about Dominic Pilla. And we talked about the story of him, and there's a monument there. But I think that the children at large in Vineland would benefit from knowing that the freedoms that they experience in our country are experiences that they have and freedoms that they have that someone paid a price for. And I think that's very important in our civics lessons to our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any more? Anyone else like to address the public this time? Mr. English?
You're late with your paper, Scott. But we'll hear you anyway.
Good evening, Mr. President, Vice President, Dr. Gruccio, fellow board members, the public. I'm here this evening to discuss one of our policies and our rights as board members. Board members really have two main roles: the roles to hold the superintendent accountable and the roles to maintain policy and create policy. I just want to give you a little history lesson on policy 7250. This policy was a policy that has, when you look at your revisions on the bottom, it's been revised several times. I think when I looked, it was possibly 4 or 5 times. The last time was April of 2016. And the reason we had to go that route was because we had a vast request to name some facilities which are part of the building after some members. At that time, for the board members that were not present, Mr. DeSanto was very vocal on how we should do our process and how we should clean a policy up to make it pretty transparent and easy for not only board members but public to understand the process of it. Through that, we had Ms. Acosta, Mr. Boardley, Mr. Sabrana, and Mr. Jennings. When I was president, we were all board members, and I believe our policy after the first reading and the second reading, it pretty much was a 9-0 vote that we had to move forward with changing a policy. Here we are now, 2018, we're discussing this policy again, and I'm just very surprised that it really got to this point. But just to, I understand, we talk a lot about, I guess what was coming across to the public, well, the main reason the board didn't support this was the hurting of feelings. And I don't really believe that. Feelings is part of it. I have to be honest, I spent 2 years in Dr. Gruccio's office every day, and whenever this discussion came up, Dr. Gruccio said it does bother her about the feelings. Some of the rumors are out there, maybe that a certain building wants to be named after a relative. Never in my 2 years in Dr. Gruccio's company did that ever come out of Dr. Gruccio's mouth, or was it something that I heard? But you hear the rumors out there, so I'm kind of here this evening to let some people know what the rumors are versus the truth versus the way things are. So I pulled up some of the minutes, and I apologize if I do go over my 5 minutes, but I just want to I want to make the point clear that it's very simple as board members to say the reason we voted on this in a negative way was because the board in 2016 already made a decision. Well, it wasn't a slam dunk decision, it was a 5-4 vote, and that's pretty much right split down the middle if you really want to break it down that way. But through that process, back on June 1st, the resolution was 3.6, resolution naming Lincoln Avenue Middle School. Mr. DeWinnie asked a question, Ms. Rios asked a question, and you know, they were good questions, and I have copies for each of you to review. But one that came from Mr. DeWinnie later on was Mr. DeWinnie asked if the reason we are doing this now for the naming of the school, is it for the naming of school documents? Dr. Gruccio said correct. What happened at that time was, anyone that's familiar with the school process, to get it to the point that it didn't happen in 1 year or 2 years. It was many boards before that current board in 2016. We just had the power to vote to move forward. There were documents, there were blueprints, there were permits that needed some addressing, and the only common denominator we had to that building was the name Lincoln Avenue Middle School. So to keep the ball rolling, that's what we decided as a board that night at a 5-4 vote to, actually, that was back when you had a board meeting where you had a work session, you heard from the public, you digested it over a week, you came back a week later with a fresh mind, hearing from many different points, and you voted with a clear conscience on something that you took time to think about, not something that you got slapped in your face pretty much the night of the meeting. A couple other things that were asked that night. Myself asked if the board can decide on renaming a building at any time. Mr. DeSanto, you said absolutely yes. The following week, which was known as June 8th, 3.6 is on the agenda as the board approved the resolution naming the school located at 3133 South Lincoln Avenue, the Lincoln Avenue Middle School. 3 questions were asked, one by Mr. Sobrano. Mr. Sobrano asked if we are under some obligation to name the school now. Dr. Gruccio said no, we are not under any obligation. Okay? Ms. Rios voted no because she believes the public deserves the opportunity to name the school if possible. Keep in mind, we had thorough discussion, and at the time, no one from the public came up. A lot of people say, why didn't the board push for that? If anyone recalls, back then with the naming of the Tanner building, the board got very vocal to the point where you conflicted yourself out of a possible vote. So never should a board member really bring up the name of a person or really spearhead this. It should be spearheaded by the taxpayers that put you as board members in those seats. I clearly understand the process. I believe the seasoned ones do, and the new ones, I know you're definitely learning on the fly because it is definitely 100 times more than I'm sure you ever thought it was going to be. The final question that night was asked by me. I asked if future boards or someone from the public decides that we would like to have the Lincoln Avenue School named after someone, do we have a policy in place that can make that happen? Mr. DeSanto clearly stated, he said yes, there are a number of scenarios, whether it is recommended by a board member or public member. So again, when you go through this policy, you guys can beat it like a dead horse. I highlighted this evening with all the PowerPoints because, you know, theoretically, when you look at this policy, it still has some gray areas, and when you walk away from the board, you can sit back and say, wow, I worked my butt off with this board to make it pretty crystal clear, and yet there are some things in there that make you wonder, does this person qualify? Does that person qualify? Well, honestly, I think it might be time for another revision of this, and you guys can simply do that by following your bylaws, which I said a copy of them. I have a copy of them this evening too, because your bylaws clearly do state you can suspend the policy anytime, clean it up, revise it in any manner, emergent. We had a time when Mr. Medio, you were president, with Mr. Malamed going to be passing away soon. We flat out dismissed that policy. We invoked as board members our bylaw, and we made something happen.
Mr. English, we have to wrap it up.
Yes. That being said, tonight we had the privilege, I had the privilege to be called in through a group of community members who I respect a lot. Not only were they community members, but it was a diverse group from South Jersey. They're here tonight to honor a fallen veteran in Sergeant Dominic Pilla. When they invited me to the meeting, for input on how our policy runs. And I still believe this policy is a transparent policy. What happened back on March, I believe it was March 14th, could be, could not be. Honestly, being a former board member and president, I would have never had that happen on my watch. I know Mr. Borley supported the concept of renaming that, and that's great. Now we're 4 months into this, and this was something, in my opinion, that required a special meeting. A special meeting that would get public input, not an agenda that has 15, 16, 18, 20 items. No, this is a special meeting that, yes, unfortunately, you have to take 2 or 3 hours out of our busy schedules to do something. But I just encourage this board tonight, that is what you're voting on. I let that group know that your heart could be broken down the line if you invoke a policy. But you're going to have a tough decision. There's going to be 10 names in front of you. But this family, we were talking about hurt feelings. This family just wanted a policy to be put in place. And also, Sal Shalante's daughter was here that night. So that wasn't the only person. And there was another couple, I have their name here, that was here. So it wasn't just one person. And when we think that we don't want to move it forward for the thought of feelings, they had feelings that night too. So again, it's a slippery slope when you're sitting here as board members. And I apologize for taking more than my 5 minutes. But one thing I always did when I sat in that seat, or any of the seats that you sat in, was I took pride in the position. I also did the homework. I didn't assume. I didn't rubber stamp. I did what I thought was best for the situation. Every single school in this district has a name. And that night, when it was a 5-4 vote to name it Lincoln Avenue, it clearly states we knew that it was going to be coming up again, but the proper process is to hear it from a community member to come up to this podium and ask the board member. It shouldn't really have come down to Mr. Medio having to work on the Roberts Rule thing, because we're a team here, and that's how it always should be. And that's pretty much all that I really want to say about anything this evening. I made copies of each of you, and I would gladly have lunch with each one of you, because there's a lot more detail that goes on in between the lines. I know it looks simple. It's an agenda item 7250, invoking a policy. When I said no-brainer on Facebook and everybody got a crooked hair, let me tell you, that policy is really a no-brainer, because all you're doing is opening up something that the taxpayers that put you in those seats asked for. It's simple. The tough part is, making that decision. And that's where Dr. Gruccio's 100% right, because you walk out of there after making that decision, somebody's feelings hurt. Some people will never talk to you again, but you took that oath to sit in that seat, and let me tell you, that's really all part of the game. And in closing, the way the board handles this tonight, I really never thought that I would have the interest in running for the Vineland Board of Education again. But I got to tell you, I got the fever, and I got the fever to do things right. So that's all I have for you this evening. Thank you for your time. I apologize for going over, but I do know the 4 board members that voted 9-0 on this policy back in 2016 of April worked just as hard as the Policy Personnel Committee, as Mr. DeSanto in his time, and the phone calls that we put in there. So please, take the time to do the right thing this evening, and I thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. English. Do we have any others? Seeing none. Superintendent's recommendations for discussion and approval by the board. Dr. Gruccio.
I'd like to recommend discussion of personnel items 1.1.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend...
Mr. Media?
Yes, one comment. On the employment part of this, I have to vote no tonight, because I think that with the new state regulations on funding, with the fact that we're probably going to lose funding this year and definitely next year and the next 6 or 7 years, before we hire anybody, we should make sure that we don't have to lay them off next year, and we should also make sure that we have enough money going forward to put in place things that we need. We should get a better explanation than just the phrase replacement hires.
Thank you, Mr. Media. Any other questions or comments?
how many new hires are there? I don't see any new hires, or am I missing it?
Replacement hires.
They're all jobs that are just being replaced.
6, to answer your question, though.
And
Sorry,
do
7.
these individuals understand that, as Mr. Medio has presented, that, we are in a budget crisis every year for the last, 10 years? Do they understand?
I don't know what they understand, but I do know that they're critical positions, and if we have to cut money, that is not where I would begin cutting it. I believe we would have to go back to the 1.6 million that we received and start cutting things, beginning with things like the press box that we're going to spend $400,000 for, before I would dare cut a guidance counselor, a nurse, or a vice principal who are directly involved with our children every day. So if we have to cut money, we'll find it, but it won't be there.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none?
I recommend approval of 1.1.
Motion?
So moved.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi? Yes. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio? Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion of 2.1. Oh, yeah, thank you. I apologize. I would like to take a minute before I move on to the next item to welcome Jared Headley, who is our new vice principal. I'd like to congratulate you and welcome you to our district. If you would like to say anything, you're more than welcome.
I'll keep it very brief. I just want to thank you very much for this great opportunity. I've grown up in Vineland my entire life. I was born and raised here, and it's more than an honor to be able to work in the Vineland School District, and I look forward to the school year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're very excited to have you join our school family.
Congratulations.
I'd like to recommend discussion of field trips, district travel, and the fall athletic schedule.
Questions or comments? Seeing none?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the entry into a dual credit articulation agreement with the Atlantic Cape Community College for the 2018-19 school year.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion authorizing the board secretary to enter into an affiliation agreement for the 18-19 school year for placement of students for field internship, student teaching, practicum, and observations with the institutions that are listed under 2.3.
Any questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the board secretary to enter into a partnership with the YMCA for the Achievement Gap program.
Questions, comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding authorizing the board secretary to enter into a partnership with Complete Care Memorandum of Agreement for Student Health Solutions for the 18-19 school year in a form acceptable by the superintendent and board solicitor.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the second reading of the bylaws, policy, and regulations, which are all mandated changes and are listed under 2.6.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion to waive the time requirements for review according to policy 0131, bylaws and policies, and adopt the following policy to be in place by September 1st of 2018. Policy P2431, which is revised, and it has to do with athletic competition.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the bus evacuation drills that were completed in April as per the list provided and on file with the board secretary and in accordance with the New Jersey Administrative Code 6A:27-11.2.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend approval of 2.1 through 2.8.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
I have to abstain from 2.5, but yes to everything else.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion regarding a JROTC initiative which involves the landing and taking off of a New Jersey Army National Guard helicopter, which will take place on September 20th, 2018, with an alternate date of September 22nd, and will be at Vineland High School.
Questions, comments?
I have a brief question. What does this entail, real quick? I mean, I'm all in favor for a helicopter landing, taking off on our property, but what does it entail? Our JROTC is going to be...
They come every year, and they come and visit with the students in our JROTC program, talk about the Air Force, and we had to get permission in order to have that helicopter land. We do that each year.
Good. That's going to be fun. Thank you.
No problem. I would like to recommend approval regarding the JROTC initiative.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
I would like to recommend discussion of budgetary transfers in the general, school-based, and ECPA budgets for the month of May 2018.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion of the board secretary and treasurer reports for May of 2018.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend regarding the revised established petty cash and change funds for the 2018-19 fiscal year per the list provided and on file with the board secretary. It's administrative petty cash. And I should have said discussion regarding, I'm sorry.
Any questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion to accept the following funding. Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, October 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2019. That program will take place at the Lago Impact Center and Sabatier Elementary School.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the renewal of the lease with Robin's Nest for 1350 Southwest Boulevard, Unit Number 2, for 1 year under the terms of the current lease agreement with a 5% increase in rent equivalent to $2,500, 47 cents per month for January 2019 through December 2019, subject to the tenant's option to terminate upon a 90-day written notice to the board.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the following bid: the lease purchase financing of $782,300 from the U.S. Bancorp Government Leasing and Finance Incorporated at a rate of 3.39% and a term of 5 years. This is to pay for the acquisition of school buses and vehicles pursuant to the terms of the resolution of the Vineland Board of Ed, the release purchase transaction, and authorizing execution of a lease purchase agreement and other related agreements and action which are necessary to accomplish the transaction.
Just to clarify, that's 3.039%.
Oh, sorry.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none.
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the acknowledgement that no bids were received on Tuesday, July 3rd at 10 a.m. for the bid number 24-1819 lease of 519 Northwest Avenue. The district will re-advertise for these services.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the contract with Blackboard Incorporated for the district's out-call service from July 1, 2018 to June 30th, 2019 in the amount of $16,949.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding a year 2 renewal for the following contract at the price of $47,940 from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, with an option to renew for a 1-year term for a maximum of a 3-year contract. Online literacy service.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding authorizing the board secretary to enter into partnership with Inspira Healthcare Occupational Health Services.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding a professional service agreement with Dreyfus Speech Services Incorporated for therapy services in the amount of $80 per hour for all speech-language pathologists from July 1st, 2018 to July 31st, 2019.
Any questions or comments?
I'd like to recommend discussion regarding the tuition contract between the Vineland Board of Education and Cape May County Technical School for one student in the amount of $1,943.80 per month from September 2018 to June 2019.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend discussion regarding the following Cumberland County Regional Cooperative Transportation Initiatives: transportation quoted contracts, transportation addendum, quoted contracts, transportation addendum, and regular school year renewals.
Questions or comments?
I would like to recommend approval of items 4.1 through 4.13.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi? Yes. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
I have to abstain from 4.5, yes to everything else.
That's the end of my recommendations. The rest are board.
At this time, we have items proposed for review or discussion or adoption by board members. It is recommended by the Finance Committee that the board approve the award of the following contracts for alternate counsel regarding RFP number 11-18/19 for the term of July 1, 2018 to July 30th, 2019. Alternate counsel, Capehart and Scatcherd, PA, Frank D. Domenico, Grace Mamero and Associates, LLP. Any questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi? Yes. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. It is recommended by board member Mr. Eugene Medio to discuss and vote to invoke the process of renaming Lincoln Avenue Middle School. Any questions or comments by the board? Is there a motion? Yes, sir.
The chair may entertain a motion to invoke policy 7250 and authorize the board secretary to advertise for nominations for the renaming of Lincoln Avenue Middle School.
Mr. Medio, motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
What exactly are we voting for right now?
To invoke the process, or to advertise the process of renaming.
So open up the policy to
Accept names.
people to. Well, I'm going to have to stick with my original vote. I think we could do more with naming parts of our schools. We have, we've discussed this several times, Veterans Memorial, where we could do really nice things for all of our veterans. And it appears like this is going to be opened, but what's that? I'm sorry. It appears like this is going to, motion is going to carry, and I'm still going to vote how I wanted to, and I'm going to vote no. And it's nothing personal at all.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-1.
Mr. President, I have one comment. This is going to be an important meeting, and certainly interested in hearing presentations by everyone involved. With vacations coming up, I would hope that we could reach an agreement on a date when we're all available to be here.
We have to do the advertisement, which is...
Mr. Boardley, just a reminder to the board, the policy requires a special meeting for consideration of the nomination. So when you do schedule, please make sure that it's a special meeting and not tagged on to one of the regular meetings in August or September or whatever.
Bob, does it specify a time limit on how long between now and when the meeting's actually held?
Well, the advertisement, as I recall it, rather than recalling it, let me refer this. I believe once the publication is made by Mrs. Haley, there's a 20-day period in which to accept nominations. That I recall. And after the deadline, no additional nominations are to be received from the floor at the special meeting. No, there's no time period, but in the past, it's always been promptly after the nominations are in and based upon board member schedules in terms of when the special meeting is scheduled.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding that? Review of bills incurred during the month of May 2018. Questions or comments? Seeing none, motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. Haley.
Mr. Fiocchi? Yes. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich?
Yes.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes. We'll now have the opportunity for the public to address the board on any matter. Again, limit to 5 minutes per person, please.
Thank you again. I wanted to wait till after the vote to address this, but I currently have a bill in the Assembly that will name October 3rd Sergeant Dominic Pilla Day, so that all of New Jersey will honor his legacy and his memory. It's co-sponsored in the Senate by Senator Troy Singleton. He's the chair of the Veterans Committee. It's already passed that committee. I have 58 co-sponsors of this bill in the Assembly, which I expect to pass after budget season. And I guess my sincere hope is that after it's signed, or once it's passed, that the governor will sign this bill in front of the Sergeant Dominic Pilla School. So thank you. I hope to be back down here for that.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, again, nothing to do with this meeting. I want to thank the board again for the senior prom this year and your help with the senior prom this year. It was a terrific event for all of our seniors. I know the kids really appreciate it. Had a great time. So again, I just thank you for your support in that endeavor. And it has worked out really well. And I hope we have many more senior proms there coming up. The reason I'm here this evening is actually to discuss winter track. It was, I guess, the program is no longer in existence, which was informed to me. it came to me like really expediently. I didn't really get a chance to, again, to even comment on the program itself. In this day and age here, with all the rest of the schools in the district and everything, everyone having a winter track program is really putting us behind the eight ball. We already started off that we did not have a feeder program for the winter track program, and we used winter track, you know, as that point that we're getting athletes ready. Not only that, but we had other athletes coming out from other sports to help them keep in shape, from softball teams, softball teams, football teams, all took a part, which we know that track is a great complement to all these different sports. Our winter track team, again, we take on about 60 to 70 students every year, and you know, creates a big budget. But again, it's what we want. We want the kids to participate. And you know, this has been one of the longest running programs here at Vineland High School. I know it's been here since I've been here. My induction in 1990. I've been here since 1990, and we've had this program. It's been a very successful program. And again, it helps us to keep up with all the other schools in the area and competing. So like I said, I was caught a little off guard with the dismissal of the program. I just wish we had more time to at least talk about it. I can understand budget cuts, and trust me, I would not want to be in your position with the budget and all you have to do with the budget. But in saying that, again, I felt that probably we could have done some things to either we can cut back, whether going to meets or whatever, somehow just to lessen the load in the budget and keep the program going. Because again, it is my opinion, as well as fellow coaches out there, that is very, very important, you know, that we keep this program together. So like I said, it's a hard task to keep it up going like that. So I'm just hoping that we can come to some kind of discussions in the future about this and maybe revisiting this, because I really do think it's a big mistake to cancel this program, the winter track program. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Excuse me. When did we vote on that? I don't recall seeing that.
With the athletic director.
That's a good question.
The athletic director chose what to cut budget-wise.
So the board doesn't vote on cutting of a sports program?
They didn't cut the entire program.
Just the winter track?
Yeah, I was informed, and I was informed myself, was at the end of June, and I got a week before that my AD told me there was a discussion about cutting the program, and he said it's all going to be, final shock. I'm like, what? I thought, maybe some discussions were going to take place about it, and I got an email saying that the winter track budget was canceled on the 18th, and that's when I was at graduation practices. So, I never got a chance to address anything, but I just wish we could have had some kind of discussion about it first, and maybe some things could have been worked out.
Mr. Media?
So I think that we need to revisit that.
Hold on. Mr. Media?
Oh, sorry.
Were any other sports cut?
I was informed middle school basketball and winter track. Yes.
Middle school basketball. Coach, how many kids do you have involved in a winter track?
60.
60?
Yes. And that's every year. We have a huge amount of kids come out for the team, and they enjoy themselves, really do. And like I said, they work hard. And again, it's not just our sport. We have kids from other sports come out to keep in shape. Tess Fisher came out 2 years in her career just to keep in shape. With a couple of softball girls, Gabby Perez. So we have different kids from other sports coming in and keeping in shape as well. Some of them didn't even take part in the meet, but they came out and worked out with us, just to keep in shape. And
I tend to agree with my fellow board members here. It's something that we need to discuss, because there's other sports that we have with 2 coaches and less than 10 children participating. So,
like I said, again, we know what they said. We want participation from our athletes, and they are taking a big part of this. So that's why I wanted to see if we could revisit it at some time. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Hello, Board. I'm Scott Hubbard. I'm the assistant track coach for winter and spring with Mr. DeShields. I also found out by a student that we weren't having indoor track, and it was a surprise. I've been involved since '91 here in Vineland, coaching and teaching, with numerous student athletes, national champions, and All-Americans. If we do not have this track team, it puts our kids at a disadvantage. The disadvantage is we start winter track in November after Turkey Day. That goes 4 months. That has a South Jersey championship, state championship, regional championship. That gives our team 4 months to prepare for spring track, in additional to our indoor championship. If we do not have this program, we have 3 weeks to prepare while other teams have 4 months to prepare. That puts us behind the 8 ball, and we were talking about leaving no one behind. That's leaving our student athletes behind. We've had numerous state championships. We've had 2 indoor state championship teams here at Vineland. We've also had 2 national titles. We had 60-plus students, as Mr. DeShields have mentioned. We started out with over 100 kids on this indoor track team. We run outside in the dark, in the snow, and in the halls. It dwindled down to 60 kids. But those 60 kids enjoyed it. We had kids with disabilities running on this team that scores in the state finals. That's part of the team with track and field. We have at-risk children on this team that need this program. We have honor students. We have kids that are trying to pad their resume, and we have the kids that love the program. That's been a part of Vineland tradition since 1963, when they started the Association of South Jersey Track and Field, with Coach Kosh winning the first championship under that association. And Vineland is known as one of the top teams in New Jersey. This past year, we had the #1 girl in the country, and she didn't even throw. She got a scholarship her junior year to St. John's because she won indoor shot put. We've had a young man go to Temple on a football scholarship because the football coach saw him win the indoor state champ 200. And additional to his football prowess, they gave him that scholarship. Understanding that the impact of this on thousands of students that I've coached here and where they went with this. Our team is ranked probably the first or second team coming back for Group 4, being a state championship caliber team with the students that we have coming back. So it's significant if we turn and leave these kids out to dry. It would be a shame. We set 3 school individual records this past year and 8 individual team records. All I would like to say is, if you can possibly, please reinstate this program. This program is very important to the school and to the district. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
First, I wanted to thank the board tonight for coming out and for changing the vote. You know, a couple hundred years ago at 6th and Chestnut Street in Philadelphia, there was a vote, and that wasn't unanimous. And guess what? We have great country out of it today. But I had a hip replacement 3 weeks ago. I got all crampy in the seat, so I walked down the hallway. I noticed a plaque on the wall. And this is a beautiful building. I was commenting to Ryan Peters about just the artwork in here. It's beautiful. We don't see this in schools anymore today. But the plaque said this is an historic site. We sometimes lose what that means. This is a school of brick and mortar. It's the students that go here. It's the teachers that come here and teach. It's the school board members. It's the politicians that make the rules and regulations. That's what makes our schools historic, the people that go to them. And I just want to applaud you tonight for, 100 years from now, they're not going to remember me, you, or anybody else. But they can Google Dominic and go, holy God, what this kid did in 20 years is more than we all did together in a lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Terrence Spencer, a former teacher here in the district. I came this evening in support of my longtime friend, Elliot DeShields, and Coach Hubbard in regards to the winter track team, for which I coached probably 12 long years, 12 good years, not for the pay. I can remember 17 hours being spent in New York City at the Armory. But it was all about the kids. I just wanted to mention to Coach Hubbard that he stands corrected, because during that time that I was a coach, it was actually 3 state championships that we won, along with 12 All-American students. Several of those students went on to college, and I think what I'm most proud of, that I like to brag about, having 4 girls, is the number of females that we had to move on to college. And I can count 7. I'm really good about my stats. 7 kids, female, by themselves, that moved on to college, either by partial or full scholarships. Some of the names that you guys might know: Darren Ford, who actually ran track to me, right now playing professional baseball. Just a numerous amount of kids that have come through the program. And for me, it's always and always will be about our students. It's been phenomenal over the years, the number of kids that have come out. They've mentioned the numbers. It's just been a tremendous thing, and I've seen Coach DeShields take that program over and continue to build. So I would just kindly ask that you continue with that program so that we can continue to have our students, which we always want to keep first, continue to come out for the team and move on to college, and just have that exposure that they have going to all the different venues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Coach. Mr. English, try to keep it to 5 minutes this time.
Good evening again. Good evening again. A couple things. I have the utmost respect for Mr. Spencer, who I went to school with, Mr. DeShields, Mr. Hubbard. I saw something again that, being an experienced board member, when I see board members look like deer in the headlights, that's a bad sign. I left this board in December of 2016 with the 10 Commandments, and 10 Commandment number 10 was something that I guess I have to get a copy to the new board members. CCT, communication, collaboration, and transparency. Continue to practice this, and you can't go wrong. Ms. Spinelli, a couple meetings back, maybe it was one meeting, you had said, brought up something great that ties in with the CCT concept that I tried to bang into the heads of so many board members and employees in the district. An ad hoc committee for public relations and communications. Awesome idea, and I will be the first community member to volunteer if you decide to go that way. I don't know if it has started yet. I hope it has. I hope the minutes are great, because I love to read minutes, as you can tell. Again, you say the key word, communication. I saw your face, and you asked that question. Did we vote on it? I don't think you did. No. Interesting. Second, Mr. Jennings, not sure if you had a very interesting point about revisiting something at the last board meeting. I didn't know if that got any traction. I know you were questioning the policy and how to go at it. I will gladly coach you on that if you would like, and bring that up to the table for some discussion. And the final thing I have, Mr. Weaver will be retiring next July. Other than the superintendent of the school district, I believe this position is the second most important position in this district. And I don't know if that process has started, what the process is going to be to find the successor. I know we have an outstanding in-house candidate, and it would be like a turnkey operation, but I don't like putting the cart before the horse or putting any ideas in anyone's mind. But that's something that I don't think it's something that needs to be posted June 1, June 15th, June 30th. I think that's something that someone should know come January 1. Just something out there, because again, without the schools, our kids have schools running properly, the schools, students have nowhere to go to school. And finally, the decision you guys made tonight, I think it was the right decision to honor the policy. As board members, you have to respect that is your biggest piece of power, to enforce them or to clean them up. Like I said, every policy isn't perfect, but the first thing as board members we have to do is to read it, understand it, and enforce it. If we don't like it, we have discussion possibly about changing it, but it takes a majority of the board for that. So I can honestly say I'm happy with the decision this evening. I don't believe it had to get to this point to have a board member be the one to bring it to the table. And I do believe that what happened a couple of months ago should not have happened, because again, I felt, and I watched the meetings at home, I felt the pressure on your faces for something that should have been an easy decision, just to open up the process. With that being said, thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. English. Anyone else like to address the board? Seeing none. Board member comments. We'll start with Mr. Medio. I'm sorry. Committee reports. I don't think we had any.
I have a committee report for transportation. We sat down, discussed what's going to take place in the new building here. Construction is being done right now to open up a registration area. I recommended that we take a video and post it on our YouTube page. We're processing requests, change requests. There's a ton of work to be done as usual. Z passes are still in effect. We're expecting a 10% loss. We are prepared to expedite those issues. Last week, I believe we started moving in. It's downstairs at the end of this building, the end of the hall in the basement. There will be signage placed so everyone can see it, and I still think that video is a good idea. And we discussed privatizing or not privatizing our garage, and we've visited that a few times and did the comparison, and we're going to continue doing what we're doing. It appears to be saving us money over time, so that's what we're going to continue doing. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee reports?
I have one. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting was on June 19th, 2018. In attendance was Mr. Sabrana and Mr. Fry and myself. Discussed there was the Cumberland County College Thrive Participation Agreement which is a partnership with Bridgeton, Millville, and Vineland, and the prosecutor's office, basically bringing awareness in an effort to prevent youth violence, gang, and further education on gangs and guns. And it's a program that's being funded by the Justice Department. We also discussed internal and external course selection updates. And finally, we discussed increased accountability with summer curriculum updates. And we're scheduled to meet sometime in August.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. Any other committees? Mr. Medio, remarks?
I don't usually have any remarks, but tonight, after something that was said, I feel I have to. This shirt says Vineland football, and the other shirts I wear to these meetings say Vineland athletics, because everybody knows that I have said in the past I want to continuously support and reward success instead of rewarding failure the way we've been doing here in the last several years. And with the comment that was made about Gatone, it really brings to my mind, are these things, these 2-3 sports that board members didn't know about being cut, and this idea that when our money is cut, which it will be, that this Gatone project, which is a safety issue and really has nothing to do with anything else, is going to be cut. And I just wonder if that's a swipe at the motion that I made tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Sobrano?
I want to thank all the members of the public who came out tonight to give us information and help us make a decision. Moving forward, look forward to presentations by everyone who feels that family member or loved ones or folks they have known are worthy of recognition in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings?
Yeah, I just want to say that my decision tonight to vote no, to invoke the process, had nothing to do with any specific person, individual, anyone personally. It was about the policy and the process. That was it. I served in our military. I understand the dedication that goes along with that, and the love for your country. When you go through that training and you understand the sacrifices that are made for your country, I understand all that. I'd like to see all of our veterans acknowledged and given an opportunity to be recognized. And I just feel as though this particular process is going to limit our ability to honor all of our veterans. But I'm going to stand behind the board's decision, as I usually do. When the vote doesn't go my way, it's just the way it is, and now I got to move on and support the board, and let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fiocchi?
Ms. Daly, I just forgot to change my vote on 4.5 to abstain.
Thank you. Mr. Ulrich?
Yes, just a couple quick comments. I'd like to thank everybody that came out tonight in support of renaming the school. And, obviously there was a lot of supporters for the military. There's no greater gift than the military for our freedom. And someone said that freedom isn't free, and that does ring true. With the Mr. Medio made a vote on the personnel hiring of new people, and he voted no on it. And, you know, I did vote yes on that personnel. They're essential personnel. But it brings up a greater point that the district is bleeding money, and that the political compromises have really, this year now, have worked against us. And that our funding is going to be reduced over a 7-year period. You know, the final numbers will be sent to us once that's all drawn out, but the reality is that we're going to lose funding. So if we just look at the fact that funding is being decreased, our health care, our benefits and things that we are out of our control are going to increase, we're going to have no alternative but to look at all non-teaching positions, whether it's janitorial, kitchen, security, every non-teaching position, we're going to have to look at it and really look hard to privatize and see if that's going to be an option for us to save money. And it's the most difficult option because what I heard tonight, and I heard something from Mr. English who said that he's met with Dr. Guccio many times and she doesn't want to hurt people. And you know what? That is the truth. Dr. Guccio is one of the most caring individuals. To have false rumors spread about her and motivations are certainly not true and go against everything that I know about this woman. But the reality is that we are going to have to make some very tough decisions, and they have to be made sooner than later. We can't wait and give people a year's notice. We're going to have to enact changes that are going to protect you know, our teachers teaching in our classrooms, our athletes being able to have coaches to feed into programs that could provide scholarship opportunities or whatever the case may be. But we're really going to have to go and look at those areas, or folks, we are in for a bumpy ride. The citizens of Vineland, we've kind of the boards over the last probably 10, 15 years have really done this. And I've been a proponent of slowly raising that tax increase for the mere fact that the state formulas, even though we were getting this money, we're saying that we were underfunded by like $40 million. So what's going to happen is we're going to be faced with maximum tax increases over the next 7 years. So we catch up that number, because if that number was balanced and that we were contributing our fair share, we wouldn't have a cut in aid. But there is a limit to the money tree, and the money tree is drying up. So, you know, the one thing that I'm going to press for, I'm going to press for these RFPs. I'm going to continue to press for ways to save district and focus on our core responsibilities, and that is protecting our students, teaching our students, and supporting them in any way we can. And that's all I got tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrich. Ms. Spinelli?
None at this time, thank you.
Ms. Acosta?
I just want to say, again, thank you to all the members of the public who came out to speak today. I'd like to thank our track coaches for making the board aware of the important issue that they raised tonight, and I would hope that it's something that we can talk a little more about so that we can try to rectify this issue. And last but not least, I just want to, just like the members of the public here today came out to support something they truly believed in, you know, I'm extremely concerned about the new school funding and potential cuts to our district. I believe that our citizens can make a great impact to our assemblymen and senators who will be looking at this matter closely as the weeks and months go ahead. But I just hope that it's important enough that we become advocates for our students and really let our representatives know the impact that it's going to have on our city when we are this county is the poorest county in New Jersey. So I'm taking this opportunity, particularly since we do have an assemblyman here, to really voice the concerns that we have. You know, we're dealing with people, we've been raising taxes, but we can't do it all. We've been trying to do as much as we can, but cutting adjustment aid is going to really make a direct impact on our ability to provide the instruction and to basically provide our students with a thorough education. So again, I would ask that you reach out to your representatives, your elected members of Assembly and Senate, and please be an advocate for our children, letting them know how much we really do need this aid. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. Dr. Gruccia?
I just have one comment. I want to make the board aware that Lewis and Doris Zucca made a donation toward the Gatone project, and I'd like to thank them publicly for that.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Zucca. I don't really have much comment other than I'm very disheartened to see you know, a sports program with that many members of our student body that participate. As Mr. Medio said, the success of what they've achieved, to cut that program just seems counterproductive compared to some of the other programs that we have, where we have maybe 10% of that participation. The decision in that is not necessarily ours at that point. That was a decision that was made by the supervisors, but it is something that I would like to work with the board on trying to rectify that. As far as the naming of the school, I'm excited to hear the publics who want to bring forward their loved ones with the opportunity to hear their stories and make a decision on that taking place. Other than that, I wish everyone a safe drive home, and appreciate everyone coming out, and have a good evening. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.